The other thing I would say is that at this particular period in time, as composers and as people in this environment, we were looking, we were exploring, we asked what if or what could be. And that was, in a way, the driving spirit. It's not an experience that you're going to have had before and probably won't in exactly the same way.
The idea to put this piece together was very clear from the beginning. It's also the way that I work anyway for this type of event. I don't start with, let's try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because I've done that for years for many different pieces in electronic circumstances already. I really had in mind, especially inspired by the non-search recordings of 1969, so of the premiere of the piece that we are dealing with tonight. Using that as a source of inspiration, I had in mind it should be this big thing.
Okay, you've got 7 harpsichords, or harpsichordists as well. Each one is amplified and then distributed in the space, and we had 13 different tape stations, and each of those had their own kind of area that they would play in, and we could play the tapes that we had all the way through. We could stop, and there were 2 of us on each station. So what we actually played back was determined by us, and if you weren't the one who was actively playing tapes, then you could walk around. And the interesting thing is that because of the size of this, actually there was quite a bit of transparency in spite of what you would think. So that you could go and you could sort of catch the pool of this sound area, maybe that harpsichord, and say which one of the 7 would that be, maybe another at the same time. But there was a transparency in that, in spite of what looks like it would just be a complete jumble.
As a source, indeed, the harpsichord in its historical sound environment, but then the way you pick it up and the way you mix it with the original tapes, that will create the entire piece. People can move around the sound, then I could just reverse that. So my patch that I prepared for today just does the opposite. It makes the sound revolve around the audience.
Cage was very interested in determinacy, and there are 2 questions. What is that? But the other more important question, I think, is why? Not just for the notes, but also what is the concept behind this? What is Cage doing?
Here again, I try to be as truthful as possible to Cage's original work. In the original performance, 205 tapes were being used on 52 tape recorders, and people were indeed manually changing these tapes all the time. And what I've tried to do here, because this sort of technology is no longer useful in 2015, so what I did is I took as much material as I could get from the original tapes, and there's still quite a lot available. And the indeterminacy is not now a tape recorder player so to speak, determining whether he or she should put another tape on the machine and try and use some other sounds for the piece. I can do that just from my central computer, so it means I can at will decide to change a tape. But also I've automized some of that, so I can, because if I want to have, in my case, 12 channels playing all sorts of different tapes, I can make sure that the computer program that runs the tapes can also decide, okay, we're going to start in this chunk of the tape, or we're going to repeat a certain chunk of a tape, and so on and so forth. And I also do that in a sort of random way, meaning that it can choose by a random generator. So I'm not determining the exact indeterminacy, but if that's possible at all. It's really decided by the computer, so it will be different each and every time.
I think that America has looked at indeterminacy a bit differently than Europe, partly because we come from a very young tradition in America, which means that we have not only no reluctance to throw things off and try again because we don't have tradition on our shoulders. I mean, I've been with European composers, and we would, for instance, walk into a cathedral, and they tell me, oh, you know, I feel the centuries. Look at me, I feel the centuries. You know, okay, I'll wait for you when you're done.
That's another thing in terms of indeterminacy. People really have to make sensible choices. So just fooling around is not the idea. There's still, especially in the, let's say, classical tradition, these things that I don't have notes, I don't have material, and I can do whatever I like, so I will do whatever I like. But of course, that's what my friend Jim Fulkerson always calls a malicious interpretation of that kind of indeterminacy. And we really want to have yet again a truthful, I think that's the word, interpretation of John Cage's work. First, I think of Cage, harpsichord, a big event, and then see if we can make a nice version of it for this room here in Amsterdam.
As I was leaving, I said, okay, don't try to make any aesthetic judgment about this, because you have no basis to look at this and say, oh, this was good, this was not good, whatever, because it was just from another world. HPSCHD, you know, in one sense, you wouldn't want to perform it for the rest of your life, you know, once a week. But you could do that. In a way, you could always be learning because it has so many facets.
Whenever you hear recordings of the harpsichord piece, the HPSCHD as it's officially called, what you hear is it is that piece. It can't be anything else.
He moved to developing systems or defining systems that enabled you to make the choices for what would be the composition. And importantly, he began to say, I'm not interested to impose my will on the world or my personality. I'm not interested to make an expression like this. I'm interested to see what might be possible. Cage wanted to set up something that he could learn from. You know, it wasn't something that he had imagined, well, if I do this and I do this, and oh yeah, I'll get this thing here. No, he wanted to set up a situation that would be completely surprising to him, and that he could learn from it.